We see things are out of balance, and we have a compulsion to want to rectify that situation. So this is why we want to change the world. We want to save things. Now, the reason that we're not already able to be doing this is that the same situation of imbalance in the world is the same environment that we were conditioned and shaped by. So we see that the world's out of balance, but we're also out of balance. So how are we out of balance? Well, luckily it's pretty simple. There's two major ways that we understand our world. One by the individual and one by the group. So the one by the individual is mostly actually based on your physical experience of the world. So it's based on proprioception, it's based on your senses, based on things that you experience. And it's very much linked to your visceral reactions to things. Now it's also the lens that you see these trees here that are different colors, and it's exciting sensory stimuli, and you see patterns and your brain likes it, and it's aesthetically pleasing, and you get these little brain nom-noms, and it's like, and you have this meaningful little interaction with the world around you. In this kind of understanding, you also build this on not just your observation and exposure to the external world, but also with the way that you interact with it in very practical, logistical terms. And this would be everyday stuff. This is you waking up, taking a shower. It's your experience with water, with smells, with that resource of water. Later on, you go and you make breakfast, and so you're interacting with eggs that came from chickens. You are interacting with the heat source and a flame. You're having to judge temperature and interact with this physical world around you to get very physical needs met. And this is important because this is something that's a situation in modern society that has changed and we haven't made essentially accommodations for. So you appreciate your world and the things that you have and you use when you interact with them, because you realize, let's say, the time it takes to boil eggs, or how easy it is to pull off half of the egg when you're trying to peel it. Little things like that. So that's your subjective understanding. That's what is true to you. And that is the little things and experiences and also pleasures that makes life unique to you, but also enjoyable. Then you have your objective understanding. Your objective understanding is primarily based on what the group agrees on is true. That's a tree, it has leaves, we use it for paper, they're tall, they don't talk, they don't speak, they don't think, according to the group, the majority that is. And when you have a lot of them together, they're called a forest, they're called the woods. This would be your objective kind of truth about trees, so to speak. Now, your objective understanding of the world is also very much formed upon the idea of you are external from your world and you need to learn all about it to be able to control it, so that way you can survive in it. And then from surviving, you move to being successful. That jump between from surviving to being successful is where we haven't accommodated for yet. We're extremely successful as a species in terms of what we're able to do. We have controlled our environment to a very high degree. We're also able to affect our environment to a very high degree. This was the goal for the longest time, is conquer. Understand knowledge is power, because then you can use it to control your environment. You can do things with it. So you end up having this really strong emphasis with doing and with product. It also goes from basic level survival to that higher than survival level, where you're being successful, which means that you have more than you need to survive. We haven't been there before as a species, I think. actually. And so it's sort of a new concept, because what would you consider success? You know, it's not, we defined it as not just surviving and being alive. So is it that you enjoy your day more, you're happier, or you experience more pleasure, or you exert less energy, or you experience less pain, or you're able to manipulate your environment more, or perhaps you are higher in rank than others in the group? What exactly is success? I'm not sure if you have that in other animal species. And so it's probably something of a new evolutionary opportunity or a tactic, technique. So we're dealing with that. We got confused at the level between success and survival, right below it. So what do we do in first world societies? We amass things, accumulate things. We try to aggregate as much resources as we can, or raise to the highest positions of power that we can, because that's being successful. That's the thing to do. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be successful. And so, and this isn't necessarily
that's what the group defines as being successful.
It's the general spoken, if not unspoken, pressure. That's what do you do when you were a little kid? After you're old enough to kind of walk and talk by yourself and think a little bit, you send you to school, start learning things, because you need to learn things to be able to do things, to be a what's it called, producing citizen, like a participatory citizen, someone who's being a member of society. What do? You have a job, you do civil service, you're part of the community, you're doing things. And we're meant to do things, but it's just what we're doing and what the goals are. So, at the point when we were able to affect the rest of the group, when we push for our success at the expense of others, and that's really where it hits a point, is where, do I want to be in a state of surviving that is pretty nice and pretty ideal, like the highest surviving you can get, lowest amount of stress without overindulgence, so to speak, or do you want to go to that next level? And if you don't see the consequences of that next level, why wouldn't you go there? So you have a few opportunistic individuals that see that opportunity of, well, we've tapped all the resources that can come from the ground easily, but what if we tapped these resources that could get things from the ground, and we could get just as much, even more? See, it's not the whole group. You have certain, I'm going to call it predatory instincts, and not human instinctual patterns in terms of the individual and the group. Because it gets to a point where it's pathological, what people will do to benefit at the expense of others. And they very much know this consequence, in theory. But here's the thing, here's why we're able to do this. The understanding that I told you about, that you form as a child from your group, is sometimes the only input you get. And if you haven't been exposed to things that would show you otherwise, we're very good at justifying a world. We fill in patterns, we fill in pictures. Even our visual space is constantly filled in, because we have a blind spot where you can't perceive anything, but you never see a blank spot in your field of vision. That's what our brain is meant to do.
Where is this blind spot?
It's, I believe, your macula. It's right by it's right where the optic nerve is. So you don't have photoreceptor cells right there. So there's a little blind spot. I think it's like there, something like that. Anyhow, you never see a blind spot. You see everything. It's just like when you have an idea about something that for the most part is true, and there's a little part, you feel that understanding in kind of in your mind, because our brains want cohesive pictures, because that's how you put something away. Otherwise, each has to be labeled and cataloged all by themselves, and the issue of how to organize them is very high in computing power. So that's why you group things together, because then you can get them easier and you can use them more easily, and you don't have to use that cognitive processing resource just to identify something that you've already seen, you already understand. So we like patterns, we latch onto patterns. It makes our brain happy because it's evolutionarily fit to do so. It's beneficial.